Welcome to Answers from Genesis, where Jen and Alan deconstruct Christianity. My name is Genesis, and I am an addict.
My name is Alan, and I am an addict.
And today we are beginning a new series called Addicted to God. If you find this series helpful, Alan may use this as a foundation for a new book. So please leave us your comments at the end. By the way, this will be exactly 30 minutes long.
And believe me, you'll know.
All right, Alan, what are we addicted to? Are we addicted to God, the Bible, Christianity, church? What is the focus of this series going to be about?
We are addicted to a void that has been created by Christianity, religion in general, but our focus, Christianity, because that's the past we come from, but it will be all encompassing because I think all religions deal with that void. And it is a issue called sin. We are sinners, and we need to fix that problem, and we need a God to fix that problem. And different religions approach it different ways, uh, but uh, but in the end, Christianity, of course, talks about faith alone and Christ alone, and that's how we receive salvation. And so there's that unique element to Christianity versus other religions. Although I will show, and we will talk about in future episodes, how they're actually not so different after all. But we'll reserve that for another time. But really, what happens is Christianity comes in, religion comes in, and creates a void where there wasn't one, and then it says that it has a solution to fill it. And so what we become addicted to is that craving to fill that emptiness that we have been told we feel, that void, that resolution of sin that offended some holy God that's going to send us to hell and punish us forever, or in some theologies, just die without any sort of eternal life. So we feel the need to remedy that, and so we are addicted to the feeling of forgiveness. We feel addicted to the feeling of a love of a God that cares for us and wants to take care of the sin problem for us. But ultimately, it's the addiction of filling that void of forgiveness, and we need that desperately when we feel like we have that emptiness, that sin problem within us. So we have been taught, brainwashed, if you will, to believe that we have an issue that we don't have, and then we have a need of filling that problem with something that doesn't even exist. But because we have that void now that's been created, we'll believe whatever it takes to fix it. And so that's where religion comes in, specifically Christianity, and creates the void. It doesn't fill the void; it creates it. And this is the problem, and that's what we become addicted to: the filling of that void. And there's many different ways that people feel that void being filled, depending on what their issue is in life. And we'll narrow it down more as time goes on. But one of them specifically, very much, is forgiveness, the feeling of the presence of God, and usually that's filled by doing all the things that you're supposed to do as a Christian: singing worship songs, going to church, serving, giving money, whatever it may be. And so you feel that void being filled for just a little while. It's very, very much like just about any other addiction. The addiction that you have never actually fills the void. It creates the void with the promise of filling it, but it never actually fills it. And so I'll just lead off with that and turn it back to you if you want to make some comments.
Okay. So it sounds like you're saying that there's a void. It's an artificial void, right? And then they promise to fill this artificial void, but they don't really. So why would people stay in Christianity? Are we really just addicts by nature? Why are people staying in Christianity if it's not really filling the void that has been falsely put there in front of us to begin with?
The reason is because we feel and believe. Well, I should say, because we believe it does, we feel it does actually fill the void when it doesn't. I'm going to parallel this to the addiction of nicotine.
Okay.
smoking cigarettes. I was highly addicted to smoking, but prior to having my first cigarette, I never needed a cigarette.
Mm,
I was stressed all day and never felt the need for smoking. It wasn't my go to. You know,
right.
you often how do non you know smokers ask how do non-smokers deal with this? Well, easy. We're not addicted. That's the reason we
Right.
deal with the same stuff smokers deal with every day, but we don't turn to nicotine to solve our problem that we're feeling. Smokers run to that. They smoke, and then guess what happens after they smoke? They still have the problem. So it doesn't actually solve the problem. It it doubles the problem because now you're not only still having to deal with the original problem, but now you have an addiction you have to deal with that you never actually had to begin with that somebody told you once would solve the problem. So smoking, what it does is it creates a void. It doesn't fill the void. So even when you get that shake, that craving to go have that cigarette, you think you're filling the void when you're not. You're actually creating the void for the next time that you just need to fill that addiction. Nicotine never actually solves or deal with the issues you're facing in the moment. It's a separate thing altogether. You're out here doing this thing thinking you're solving this problem, but you're not because you come back and the problem's still there. It never takes it away. So now you have two issues to deal with. You ever notice smokers that when they're smoking, they hate that they're smoking. When they're not smoking, they wish they were smoking. It's the most
Okay.
ill thing on the planet. And even when they are smoking, they're never paying attention. It's not like they're sitting there going, man, I love this cigarette. No, they're looking on their phone, they're talking, drinking, whatever. This is just they don't even know they're doing it. It's like a mindless thing, and you think you're filling a void when you're not. So much the same way, uh, Christianity has come in and it has created a void just like nicotine, one that was unnecessary. It doesn't actually fix our real problems of life, but it claims to. It says, hey, let me tell you what your problem is. It's this thing called sin, and you need a resolution to that. And so it's almost like if I were to parallel Christianity to cigarettes, I would say that um, that that sin is like the the nicotine tobacco in the wrapped cigarette, and the paper is like God's forgiveness. So nicotine infused tobacco is sin, and God's forgiveness is the paper wrapped around the sin. And so you go out there and you're always trying to get rid of that problem that you have. But the reality is neither the paper nor the nicotine nor the tobacco, none of that ever actually dealt with the real issues of life. Sin and God's forgiveness never actually deals with any of the real issues of life because the real issues of life require personal responsibility, maybe therapy, maybe personal work, like whatever it is. Like you have to deal with issues in life and not turn to some God that's just going to take it away and fix it for you. And so what a lot of what addicts typically do is they're always looking for that great hit, that next great hit. And Christians, and I was one, so I know this is true, and we do the same thing. Now, preterism is sort of a unique breed, and there's plenty to deal with in that end as well. But I'll just deal with uh, the majority of popular Christianity. Jesus will someday come back and fix this. And so in the meantime, I'm just going to keep filling this. I'm just going to keep circulating through this void that I feel until he comes back and finally takes it all away. Well, he's not going to come take it all away because there's nothing to take away when there's not really an issue of sin. That's not your problem. That is a facade. That is a created problem. Um, so I can see dramatic parallels between other addictions and Christianity. We turn to something that isn't actually solving our problem, but we think it is because it feels good in the moments. But at the end of the day, you still have your problem. I have seen so many stories, and you've been to church as much as I have, maybe
Oh,
more. I don't know,
yep.
but you see these testimonies. God freed me from my alcoholism, my drug addiction, whatever it is, your addiction, and God took it away. What you and those stories are few and far between. What you don't hear about are all the people who God did not free from those addictions. Now they're smoking, drinking, taking drugs, and also dealing with the addiction of God because it never actually fixed their problem.
So
It
they
all
just added an addiction on to the other addictions that they already have. They're adding another addiction onto it.
correct. You've just added another addiction, and now you've just made their life worse instead of actually having them deal with their original issues. Um, and then you also very rarely hear so you don't hear about those stories. You also don't hear about the stories of the people who God freed, but then 3 years later they're right back into the addiction plus God addiction. You don't
Right.
you don't get pastors say, I would like you to come up and tell that story. Let's share with the congregation how you were free once and you went right back into it and God let you. Like they don't do that. Of course not. They only tell the chilling stories, but they're few and far between. And it also doesn't deal with the people who have been Christians before they got all these other addictions, and now they're addicted to God, and then later they became addicted to alcohol and addicted to drugs or whatever. Why didn't God stop that if God is so great in solving all these? So you see, Christianity truly is creating an addiction. It is creating a void. It is not solving one. It is not filling one. It is creating more problems for people than it is helping them. And so to your original question, and I think you asked me, why do people stay in it then?
Mm-hmm.
I think number one, I said, because they feel like something's being filled, because it feels good when you are creating that void for the next one. You don't realize that's what you're doing because in the moment you think you're filling it, but you're not. So when you go to church and you're feeling empty and down, I've had to, unfortunately, as I've been thinking through a lot of these issues and topics since our interview and last time we had a chance to talk together, there, so many things have just made more sense to me. And because when I did my interview, I actually didn't know why I left Christianity. I didn't know why I was stuck in it. I didn't know why I left. Like, just to me, it just felt like a trunk opened and I left. But I've pondered a lot. Why did I finally escape? What helped me realize it? Why was I stuck in it? And as I was pondering these things, you start to realize, what is it about going to church and singing depressing worship songs about how miserable we are and how we are worms and just need Jesus. I was listening, and I've had to entrench myself back into that world a little bit so that I could really start to figure things out, because I really have a desire to help people now to be able to escape. So I had to entrench myself back into the world quite a bit. And I've been listening to a lot of praise songs, especially because I know that music is a huge part of Christianity, a huge part. And so you go and you sing these love songs to a savior. I was listening today to a song called "Draw Me Close." I don't know who it's originally by, but the version I heard was by the Katanas. Draw me close to you, never let me go. You know, it's like, it's just drudgery. You know, I'm miserable. Please help me. Please draw me close. And we sing a lot of that stuff. If it's not that, then it's the, praise the Almighty King to make you feel better about, triumphing His glory. But it made me realize, I was thinking, I was like, huh, this feels a lot like what happens when you break up with a girl. You go and you listen to a bunch of depressing love songs, and for some stupid reason, it makes you feel better.
Yep.
We've all done it. Why does that make you feel better? No clue. Something weird about our psyche. But when we feed ourselves with those sad moments, it makes us feel better. And I got to realize, boy, there's a reason why, and you've probably seen this too, why so many secular love songs have been changed into Christian love songs by changing the word girl to God or whatever. Have you seen that? And that
Exactly.
there's
Yep.
a reason why that worked. It suddenly occurred. There's a reason it worked, because it's the same mentality. Like,
Yep.
you wanted that relationship so bad, and you're in the shakes without it, and you go and you listen to stuff, and it makes you feel better for a time. You go to church and you sing this stuff because you feel that emptiness, and it makes you feel better for a time. That's addiction. This is what we're dealing with here, and because we have quasi solutions to this problem, and then of course the pastor gets to speak the word of life into us, and he gives us God's meal for the day, and we just feel better because not only did we sing our depressing songs and triumphant songs, but now we heard from God, and now we're like, okay, God's forgiveness, I feel it. I feel it. And then you go home and you're just like, God, this is great. And you go to lunch and dinner, and by the end of the day, you forgot about it. And so the cycle starts again. And that's why you have to go to church all the time. And that's why you hear pastors say, you must stay in the word. You must keep praying. You must keep singing depressing songs. And you must keep coming to church and hearing the word. You must take the sacraments, because without that, you're eventually going to lose that void that you need filled, because it's just going to disappear. So, and that's kind of what happened to me. So there's all of that. And then why initially are Christians stuck in it and it's hard to escape is because, let's face it, what we see is American Christianity. I'm not really even sure what Christianity is in other countries. Because I mean, we send missionaries to other countries to fix their Christianity.
Right.
You know, we have to change them and make their culture like ours, because apparently we're arrogant enough to think that American Christianity is the way everybody should do it. So, I mean, I think Christianity is pretty much American. I mean, I don't know. At least that's all I can seem to see, because whatever everyone else is doing is closer or slightly different than what we're doing here. But at least in America, because I mean, I'm not like some expert that's traveled the world and seen it. I'm only saying this based upon what I've observed. But at least here in America, we grow up inundated with God. You can't escape it.
Yeah, true.
God's you grow up with pictures on your wall like I did. I know I'm somebody because God don't make no junk. You know, God. You pray after the meal. You God. There's no escaping it. God. So it's next to impossible to just not believe there's a God. It's almost like it's just an assumption here in our country. Now, some people are very, very fortunate and get out early. I don't know how they did that. My girlfriend, amazing. I don't know how she did that. She was much more intelligent than I did way early on. So she got out somehow. But a lot of people don't even consider that there's another option. Mm-hmm. God is just what there is. That's just who it is. And you don't even think about it. Even in the most non-religious homes, you just throw the word God around. God damn it. You know, even God damn it. It's just God. So I think it's very, very difficult to remove the brainwashing of a God culture just by hearing arguments about how awful Christianity is or how illogical it is. That's not going to work. It didn't work for me. It's not going to work for anybody else. Wow, I got fireworks going on in the background. Did you see that?
No.
That must be somebody must have said I'm on fireworks or something. I don't know. Does that mean I'm going to blow up, or does that mean I'm on fire? I don't know. Anyway, we're gonna have to research. I don't know what that was, but that was cool. Anyway, but yeah, it's very difficult to eliminate that when you can't comprehend any other option. So attacking all the views of Christianity with logical arguments has never worked to help somebody escape. I don't never heard of anybody escape because somebody showed a refutation of Christianity. Most people don't know why they escaped. They just know one day they were just like, wow, this doesn't make sense anymore. And they just kind of woke up. They don't know why. Here's why. Somewhere along the line, the brainwashing got removed. They may not know how, but somewhere along the line, through a process of things they've been doing, studying, whatever, the brainwashing was going away. And once that brainwashing was removed, it's like being in a prison cell where you've picked the lock finally and the door has opened, and now you have a choice. You can walk out, or you can stay where you've felt safe all this time, like a battered woman by her abuser who doesn't want to leave because it's the only place she feels safe because the world out there is scary. But when you remove the brainwashing and you open that prison cell, that is the only way you can escape. And a lot of people are afraid to go, just like with addiction of any other type. But when that door opens, that's when you run. That's when I ran. Anyway, that's it. I don't know. I feel like I just rambled forever. I hope some of that.
So while you were talking, it kind of made me think of something that's really top of mind for many Americans today, and I think people around the world probably as well. And that is how the government comes in, they create a problem, and then when the problem escalates enough, they come in and they pretend to be the savior to save you from the problem that they created. So what I think I'm hearing you say, Ellen, is that this is really no different. So religion, Christianity in particular, is what we're talking about here, but So Christianity has created this problem that doesn't exist. Are you telling me that we don't have a God-sized hole in our heart that can only be filled by God? Because that's what I was taught.
Verbatim,
Right.
also.
So so if I don't have this God-sized hole, because this was something that made me, people would ask me about that when I left Christianity. Well, what's filling your God-sized hole now? Only God can fit into that hole. I didn't even think about it really until you started talking about this, that that God-sized hole is only something that is in my imagination because that's what the church told me. There is no God-sized hole
There's
in,
no hole.
right? Is that what you're saying? There's no God-sized hole in my heart that has
That's what
to
I'm
be
saying.
filled by God?
Correct. There's no hole. You've been taught that there's a hole, and now you're stuck.
So this is
Let me just jump in there for just a second. Let me piggyback on what you just said. There is a reason, okay? Because when I was a church planter, right, I worked really hard, studied really hard of what it took to grow a church. So I went to seminars from church planting gurus, read books all over the place.
I remember when you were doing that.
The one consistent thing that I learned through all of that if I was going to grow a church is that you have to get people when they are in trouble, tensions, or transition.
Mm.
That's prime time to get them. Why? Because they're in a place where in that very moment you can tell them they have a hole that is God shaped. Because they're hurting and they need something. And if you tell them what their need is, they believe it and they look for a solution.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why those tactics work in Christianity, especially with younger people who haven't developed their minds fully. And so they more, especially brainwashed with the God stuff that I was talking about earlier. It's just pounded into us. But even as adults, even later in life, yeah, when you're looking for something, anything, because you're hurting, if somebody comes along and gives you something that makes any semblance of sense, that's a God-shaped hole. Oh, well, that adds up because there's a God. Of course, there's a God. I must have a God-shaped hole, and there you have it. Problem solved, right? This is what we do.
I'm trying to remember what part of the Bible actually said that we have that God-shaped hole. Now that I think about it.
August 15:1, correctly.
All right. So when you're talking about addictions and you're talking about smoking, and we all know that smoking is harmful to us, and yet addicts continue doing that. And I think about other addictions like alcohol and drugs, sex addictions, gambling, all these kinds of things. Um, we think of those as all being harmful. And so we kind of have in our mind, I need help with my addiction. If we get to the point where we admit that we have an addiction, right, then we're like, okay, I need help with my addiction. But I don't think that Christians see that, right? Do you think that being addicted to God or be addicted to Christianity, being addicted to the Bible, being addicted to going to church, any of those kinds of addictions that are associated with Christianity, is that harmful in any way, Ellen?
Let me back up a little bit with what you were saying earlier. I'd like to suggest that most addicts uh, don't actually think they're addicts. Uh, Most of the time, they think, "Oh, I can just stop whenever I want to stop. I
Sure.
like, I want this. This is wonderful. I need this." Any of that sound like Christianity?
All of it, yeah.
Right? I mean, addicts don't know they're addicts. They don't think they are
Yeah.
until you start doing the brainwashing, and then they start saying, "Oh, wow, I guess I am addicted." Because listen, you can tell an addict they're spending $400 a month on cigarettes, smoking, and I know smoking, so because I was highly addicted to smoking, so I can talk from that more than any of the other addictions. But they're all, you can parallel them with whatever one you have because you know it's going to be the same type of thing.
Mhm.
Uh, and they'll be like, "Wow, that's a lot of money. I can't believe I'm spending that," while they're standing there with their cigarette in their hand because they don't care.
Right.
Not not enough. You can tell them, you can show them all of the commercials that TV has done on all the negatives of how it's affecting your lungs and scare the crap out of people, the living bejesus out of people. And is that going to help? Nope.
No.
None negative things about addiction seems to ever help people quit. And I learned that through Alan Carr's easy way to quit smoking. Alan Carr's program, his method is phenomenal. I'll throw it out now, and we'll talk about it later as well, because
Okay.
it's very, very pertinent to my method here of escaping Christianity. But I just wanted to throw a highlight out there because that's something he realized. And one of the problems is non-smokers who have never smoked don't know what it's like to be a smoker. So they think if you come in and just berate people with all the bad things about smoking, that they're just going to suddenly wake up and quit. It doesn't work. Smokers know that doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
He was a smoker, became an ex-smoker, realized why he became an ex-smoker, and then took that approach in dealing with smokers. Instead of attacking all the negative reasons, let's discuss all the praiseworthy reasons for smoking. What is so great about it? Let's talk about it. And so you talk about all the wonderful reasons, and before you know it, as you're going through his book, you're like, well, crap, there's not a single thing I like about smoking. This sucks. And it's like so easy to quit, because by the time he's done with you, you're just like, this is terrible. I don't even like this. It's amazing. That's what happens when you undo the brainwash. All right, so parallel to Christianity. So back to Christianity now. I've realized that the parallel is exactly the same. I've never seen this method taken with religion before with Christianity, but I may or may not be the first. I don't know, but I've researched. I haven't seen anybody else do this. But I'm taking Alan Carr's method and I'm applying it to religion.
Okay.
All the negative attacks on Christianity, all the bad things about it, are not going to make somebody stop doing it. You have to show them, let's take a look at all the great things we love about it. And one at a time, we start to realize, why do I like this? This isn't good at all. So to answer your question specifically, I think all of these things we do are absolutely harmful to us, depending on your motivation for it in some ways. There are some differences, obviously, from doing a substance abuse, but nonetheless still harmful. But if you like to study the Bible because you are a scholar and you just are using that to study historical documents, and this is one of them, the Bible, that's great. More power to you. I still feel like I could be useful in that world because I feel like I have a very strong grasp on the Bible. Do I think it is a true story about some man named Jesus who is the Son of God who came to save the world? No, I don't think that anymore. But I do think it's a cool story. I think there's a lot of connection. I think there's a lot of really fun stuff in there, and if you study it, you can make some fun connections. But the problem is when we start thinking that book needs to be our source for life. We have for a while now negated the usefulness of religion. Science has demonstrated so many things that make so much more sense than a God that's invisible, that we can't see, that just takes faith to believe. It was useful in its time in the evolution of humanity. As we've grown, as we've developed, that served its purpose for a time. But now there are better explanations to things. And people who are still holding on to that rule book is essentially saying, let's take the rules and laws that governed a civilization from 2,000 plus years ago, and let's still make it rule our new society today, our new civilization. It doesn't work because we're different. We're in a different world now. We've grown, we've developed. There's so many things that we've come to understand, both scientifically and emotionally and societally, socially. So we have to mature out of previous stages of evolution to get to a point where we actually grow with humanity and let energy have its course in us. But that I see as some of the dangers of living a Bible world or a God-centered world, is we're still living in a very ancient mentality and trying to apply it to a time that it doesn't belong. And so it's very harmful and dangerous. And 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 so that's just a very, 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 very small way in which it's harmful. When you start living for
Ding, 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 ding. Hey, just like with any addiction that you need to quit, once the brainwashing has been removed, you pick a time and you just stop. So please like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you again next week for more on how we are addicted to God.